This is just this is just this is just a regular update. I'll be talking about some trivia. Date September 5th, 2018. Right. I'll get this out of the way. I've been thinking about shit for a long time. Mainly Doctor Who. Doctor Who. Been thinking about the Sixth Doctor era Colin Baker, his second and final season, The Trial of a Time Lord series, where he meets this guy called the Valeyard, who actually turns out to be his future self. Yeah, Doctor Who, the classic series back in the day. I believe this took place, the filming that it was broadcast at some point in 1986. This was about 3 years before its cancellation in 1989. The Valeyard was supposed to be the Doctor's future self, caught somewhere between his 12th and final incarnation. And in the new series, the Matt Smith version of the Doctor was supposed to be his 13th and final incarnation. And when Matt Smith said that he was supposed to die on Trenzalore, this was supposed to be where the Master found him. The Anthony Ainley version of the Master. Yeah. The Master's 14th life, apparently. That one where he stole the body of a guy named Tremas from Traken. Apparently, when the Time Lords decided to give Matt Smith's Doctor a whole new set of regenerations, they ended up creating a temporal paradox. Now, I actually heard the Doctor, when Christopher Eccleston had the role in the episode Father's Day, that sometimes the Time Lords were well equipped to handle paradoxes as long as they didn't go too far. But since the Time Lords were not there at that time, that's where all those temporal gargoyles came from. So since the 13 of the Doctor's incarnate forms, 13 out of the 14 that we had seen so far, had enveloped Gallifrey and shifted it into a pocket universe. They had essentially changed Gallifreyan history. It was slight enough to make it appear as though Gallifrey was destroyed. But then Tom Baker, as the curator, said the name of it is all one title, Gallifrey Falls No More. Not Gallifrey Falls or No More. It's Gallifrey Falls No More. So by that, Matt knew that that it worked and that Gallifrey was still out there. But what is this pocket universe? Well, we go back to the classic series in, I believe it's State of Decay, where K9 says that since we're in a smaller universe, this was when they were in E-space, exospace, that shorter trips would be more stable. And thus gives a little hint on where Gallifrey could actually be E-Space. The home world of the Time Lords is in E-Space, apparently. But yeah, this is not actual proven fact. I'm merely speculating based on what I've known from both series. I've seen them both all the way up to the first season of Peter Capaldi. I haven't seen the second of him or anything that followed. I don't mind being spoiled on anything, because guess what? If you spoil it all, it'll be like watching the episode, basically. But can anyone spill out an entire episode in that sense? No, because you don't even remember everything that happened. So even if you tell me everything you know, or what you've seen, you still haven't told me everything. So there's no such thing as absolute spoilage. No such thing. It doesn't exist. So if I were you, I wouldn't worry about that with me. So you want to post spoilers. It may concern other people, but it doesn't concern me because I don't really care. And just think of it this way. I'm spoiling a hell of a lot. I'm spoiling huge. So if the Time Lords changed history on the Doctor, does this prevent the existence of the Valeyard? Does this prevent the Valeyard from coming to play? Well, it depends on how far back in time the Valeyard had gone back to. Now, we don't know whether or not the Master took the Valeyard to Gallifrey between the time Peter Davison's Doctor was last there and the time Colin Baker's Doctor arrived. He could have shifted back prior to that time, possibly even as far back as prior to when the Doctor was born. Valeyard sets events in motion to create himself. Well, this isn't proven. Again, this is not proven fact. I'm just speculating. I'm speculating all of this. So, from this, this could explain why Sylvester McCoy's Doctor in Remembrance of the Daleks, next to the last season before the classic series was canceled, he said, "I am far more than just a Time Lord, possibly even a paradoxical one. A Time Lord that was never supposed to have existed." But as the Valeyard essentially created himself by shifting back in time and setting forth events into motion to cause himself to be born. Now we know that from the Curse of Fenric that Ace, his companion, had set events into motion to create herself, which some had speculated there's a reason that she relates so well to the Doctor. There's a reason that he likes her so much and she likes him so much. And I think it's because they both created each other. They both set events in motion to create each other. But since the Doctor only did this as the Valeyard, and the Time Lord set events in motion to prevent the Valeyard from existing, then it's possible they could have set events in motion to prevent the Doctor from being born. Thus, I think I know what the Doctor's name is. Now, if the BBC sends their people over here to blast my trailer and finish me off, make me get dead, then you know I was telling the truth. I believe the Doctor's name is Impossible. Dr. Impossible. Now, I don't know if I've actually heard this in episodes or not, but apparently the Doctor's name is something common, a common word that people use all the time. It's apparently hidden in plain sight. And the word that's hidden in plain sight is impossible. Doctor Impossible. Doctor Who equals Doctor Impossible. Like I said, BBC kills me. No, it's not the truth. Oh yeah, but it's just a show, so, you know, this could actually change script history where they're concerned, because they were going to do this to where it would revolve around the Doctor's name being impossible. But since I said it, they may start doing things differently. But then they may just act like they're doing it differently just to throw us off so they can lead back to this. But you can all disagree if you like. But since the Time Lords did that, they created the paradox in which the Doctor could not possibly exist. Now, what does this make the Master's name? Well, you know that when he looked into the Matrix as a little boy, he heard the drum beat, ba-bum, 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 which was apparently the heartbeat of a Time Lord. But which Time Lord? The Doctor! That's which Time Lord. Again, pure speculation. But I'm drawing conclusions based on what I know about the series. And I've watched it from the first episode of the original series to the last episode of the first season of Peter Capaldi. I watched all of those. Even read a few novelizations or 2, 3, or maybe 100. The truth about all of this is if the Doctor's name is impossible, then the Master's name would be the Impossible Madness. Because if the Doctor was never born, then possibly either the Master would never have been born or the Master would never have been driven mad. So, what does that make the meddling monk? What's his real name? Well, I've got an idea on what happened to him. Now, you notice that during the times of Romana, as well as the Rani, there was no sign of the monk anywhere. I happen to think that the monk had actually split regenerated into a good version and evil version of himself. The evil version regenerating into the Rani, the good version regenerating into Romana. It's possible they could all be the same person. But the monk was concerned with changing history. He wanted to change history to suit his selfish ends. And this has always been a staple of him. Even though he had sought revenge on the Doctor at the end of the Dalek's master plan. And the Time Lords had actually sent the Doctor in his 4th incarnate form, Tom Baker, to prevent the Daleks from ever being created. Now, I happen to think that this was the meddling monk influencing the Time Lords to do this. Because if there's anyone who wants history changed, It's the monk. So, what happened? I happen to think maybe that he met up with Modron, and Modron was looking for a way. Modron is from the episode, the Macrosode, Modern Undead, 5th Doctor era, Peter Davison, his 2nd season, which featured the return of Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier. That he had basically met Modron, and Modron was like wanting to unlock the secret of regeneration. The monk wanted to basically remove the 12 regeneration limit on himself. He wanted to be able to regenerate infinitely. Now, whether he succeeded or not, I don't know. But what I think happened was that a freak accident and the experiment had gone horribly wrong, and the monk had split regenerated into the Ronnie and Romana. Ronnie had took off in the monk's TARDIS and left Romana stranded there with Modron and his undead. And the Modron had been cursed with living in a state of constant regeneration. So, what happened with the Romana? Well, the Black Guardian, disguised as the president, came and got her and took her to meet the Doctor as his new companion. The Doctor, not knowing Romana was, in fact, partly the monk. Now, can Time Lords recognize each other if they look into their eyes? They have to look into their eyes a certain way. There are facets in Time Lord eyes that are way more complex than our own. And you have to look pretty deep to find the familiarity. They don't always do it, you know. But the truth about the monk is that his name is Creator, Paradox Creator. He was the one, or she was the one, who led to the creation of paradoxes in the first place. And from one of these paradoxes came the Doctor, Dr. Impossible. You wonder why the Doctor's parents were murdered right before his eyes. Well, that's because they were harboring a child who was not supposed to have existed. And these 3 Time Lords would have like, well, I know I'm contradicting myself here, but I do happen to think that all 3 of these Time Lords had achieved some level of near immortality. The Doctor would go on to become Omega. I read a novelization featuring the 6th Doctor in Omega, played by Colin Baker, his Doctor, that Omega said, "I am you," to the Doctor. So that's why I say that. I'm thinking maybe Omega would be the 100th regenerative form of the Doctor. And the Master would go on to become Rassilon. And the monk would go on to become the 3rd Time Lord involved in the incident that caused Omega's ship to be destroyed. And apparently at the time, himself too. But since Omega was immortal, his will survived and he was sentenced to the world of antimatter. Now, Rassilon has immortality as well, but instead of continuing to go on as Lord President, he decided to form the Dark Tower and cause Time Lords to play the game. Anyone who sought immortality. And he would sentence them to an eternal death. Basically. So, yes. This is why Rassilon left the Master alone and said, his sins will find their punishment in due time. But then he also told the Master, you are diseased. He knew the Master was diseased because the Master was the past version of him. And who is the other Time Lord the monk becomes? I don't know. In one of those novelizations, it's never mentioned who the other Time Lord in this experiment is. But the insanity of it all is that if they are those three, then the Gallifreyans were never meant to really be the Lords of Time. This is the secret behind them becoming who and what they are. The reason they have, a law against a Time Lord meeting his own self in time was the reason. The reason for that was that's how they became Time Lords in the first place. So, this is some deep shit here. I was speaking on this because I just couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. I couldn't keep it bottled up one single bit more. Clara. Apparently in the Clara narrative, when she went into that device and split herself into billions of pieces in time, it sounded like something that took place in the episode City of Death with this creature called Jagaroth. His experiment failed and his ship exploded. It split him in time. I'm not sure if it was 12 or 14 pieces. But one of the pieces was plotting to travel back to that point and prevent himself from blowing up his ship. So, Clara was like Jagaroth in reverse. Whereas instead of one of her pieces wanting to go back and prevent that from happening, one of her pieces went back and caused it to happen. Whoa. And talk about Time Lords not crossing gender boundaries and regenerations. Don't forget, in the Hand of Fear, Eldrad took on a female form when it touched Sarah's body. And we found out that the original Eldrad was a dude with a deep voice. Yeah. And since it had been made into a woman, it was modeled after Sarah. Yeah, basically. And it was like, whoa, that's something to think about, huh? I think that might have been why when Tom Baker left the role, he said whoever he or she may be, in reference to the next actor to play Doctor Who. That was because of that Hand of Fear episode, Macrosode. The truth about the companions. They say that traveling with a doctor changes you. And it does. You spend enough time with a paradox, with something that was never supposed to have existed. And the doctor actually said to Sarah Jane in what's that episode called? It was the Sutekh episode of the Pyramids of Mars. He said, "I walk in eternity." You can't really walk in eternity unless you're nearly immortal. So how did Tom Baker's doctor know that he was going to go on regenerating? On and on and on and on and on. Unless Clara Osgood shifted back and told him. She didn't just have access to the doctor's past, she had access to his future as well, including the Peter Capaldi era. Now, what happened to Ace? It's possible that the Chronovars had snatched her from the TARDIS. I think Ace faked her own death because something was happening and the doctor's knowledge of her existence could threaten everything. So she made the doctor think that she had died, and that's why in the new series, the doctor never mentions Ace. He never mentions Ace because he thinks that she died, and it's painful to him. So, why did the doctor never mention Sarah Kingdom, Katarina, or Adric? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He doesn't mention them because their loss was too painful for him to deal with. So he doesn't mention it. The chronology. How long is a single season of Doctor Who? Now, I know you're thinking 1 full year. I wouldn't say that. When Ian and Barbara first stepped into the TARDIS on the first episode, An Unearthly Child, the very first episode of Doctor Who, they had suggested that Susan was 15. But let's go a whole season and 1 macrosode later in the Dalek invasion of Earth. And the Doctor decides that Susan is old enough to make her own decisions. This would not make a lick of sense if Susan was only 16. A grandfather would be irresponsible to leave a 16-year-old child behind on a planet totally alien to her, with just one guy to be with. Unless she wasn't 16. Unless she was 18. Now, does this mean that each season of Doctor Who is approximately 3 years in length? Not necessarily. It just means it's at least 3 years in length. At least. Susan could have been 19 or 20 at that time. So, how many years? Well, Let's see if we can get a little clue in here somewhere. Let's shift back forward to the first episode of the new series, when Chris Eccleston first met Rose Tyler. And he told her that TARDIS could travel in time, and she went with him through time and space. Now, there had been like about approximately 3 episodes and then went back to Earth in her time. And a missing persons report was put in on her, and she had been gone an entire year. A year. And only about 3 or so episodes. And so if a year can take place within 3 episodes, then 3 years could take place within a season. So apparently I'm close to right here. I'm correct. It's Doctor Who Trivial Matter. Man, it's been half an hour since I've been talking like this. But I can't help this. I've got a whole lot of this shit on my mind, and I gotta spill it out. So, the Doctor's name, Impossible. And amazingly enough, I'm still alive. So, I could be in error. Or maybe they're just letting me live too. They're just letting me live to make me think I'm in error. Man, I hate it when the BBC plays with me like this. To the BBC! I'm joking. I'm kidding around. I don't mean a lick of this. It's just a joke. But all this is speculation on my part. The Doctor's real name may not actually be Impossible. There may be a way for all this to work out after all. But I know that the Time Lords changed history when they gave the Doctor a new set of lives, or did they? Maybe they changed history back. I'm confused. So, what do we have? Gonna just end it here, because I'm tired of this. Nighty night.